Yes? No? I do not know, but do not testify. What's up, StaleMates? We're back. It's day 3, Willie trials. Today was a really good one. I'm going to be very quick with this one because it was another long trial, 9 a.m. to 5, the usual. Now, I think that's just what every day is going to be, but today was fun. Today actually might have been the best day that we've seen so far, besides all the pre-trial stuff, all the injunction stuff, the videos that we did before. That was really fun too. Today, though, made the first 2 days or the first few sessions seem like we were watching paint dry, because today was great, specifically in the morning. Let's get right into it. Let's stop wasting time. Willie trials, day 3.
And here we go.
Right off the bat, Ray Machuca, he was on the stand the day before, or should I say on Friday, and then today is Monday, so he's back on the stand. And he was basically the first half of the day. So Ray Machuca, we already talked about him in the previous video. If you don't know who he is, Ray Machuca is the Chief Content Officer of FloSports or Flow Wrestling. I'm not exactly sure if there's a difference there, but that's who he is. He's still on the stand. And right off the bat, we talk about Willie leaving Flow. Now, Soltero was cross-examining him. I think that's the term, cross-examining him. And they talk about why Willie left Flow. And this was the really interesting part because we got to see screenshots of text between Willie and Christian Piles. And it's kind of fun to see, or it's entertaining, or I don't know what the word would be, but it's juicy. It's juicy to see what these guys actually talk about behind the scenes. So the reason why Willie left Flow, or at least the final straw, the straw that broke the camel's back, was Willie had tweeted what's going on in Columbus. And that was in reference to, one, he said that he was watching a dual meet with Ohio State where they weren't looking as sharp, he said. And also, I think it was around the time period of Kyle Snyder leaving to go to Penn State, and then Greg Kirkfleet flipping his commitment from Ohio State to Penn State. And so there was this, according to Jay Jaggers, weak-ass narrative about Ohio State and everything, that things were going so well. Jay Jaggers didn't like that, and Jay Jaggers sent a text to, I think it was Piles, I'm not exactly sure with that one, where he said, "What's up with Willie?" Something along those lines. Don't quote me on that. So what's up with Willie? We'll remember that when Flo wants access to Ohio State. So after, I think, Piles received that text, he goes and he texts Willie where he says, basically was on Willie about tweeting that, told him to only tweet objectively and only tweet facts, aka don't give your real opinion and real thoughts, which to me is absolutely insane. Imagine if ESPN went to Stephen A. Smith or a Skip Bayless or Max Kellerman and said, hey, don't only talk about the facts, only be objective, whatever. Those shows are set up to be debate shows. Now, I'm not saying ESPN is a gold standard or the worldwide leader in sports, but that is what us as a fans want to see, us as a consumers want to see. We want to hear people's opinions and people's real thoughts. I can go and look up a fact. Anybody can go and look up a fact. It takes no talent to do that, but it does take talent to have a real opinion, a thought-provoking opinion that the consumer, me, you, want to hear about. We want to know what's in the mind of these so-called experts of this sport that we love to watch. Absolutely insane to me that they didn't want Willie to be Willie. Matter of fact, I think that's what makes Willie have the most amount of followers from those guys from the Flow era, but that's neither here nor there. Also, another thing that Pyle says is, I vouch for you to Ray Machuca, the guy in the stand. I guess Ray Machuca had problems with Willie in the past, and he had told Piles to figure it out or Willie's gone. Now, that was something that was brought up in question about whether or not Ray Machuca had tried to fire Willie before and how many times he did that. They kind of got into the semantics of that. But really what it boils down to is Ray Machuca wanted Willie out. I think he was on Piles' case. Hey, tell him to straighten up or he's gone. Tell him to straighten up or he's gone. This thing happens with Ohio State. Piles is on Willie about it. They reprimanded him about it. Willie says, you know what? I'm out. So the next thing that they talk about is the Periscope and the access to Periscope. Now, Flo is alleging that Willie accessed this Periscope, Flo's Periscope, which is a dashboard of important information or trade secrets with Flo, something along those lines. And they are saying that after he quit and left, he went back and accessed that after he left, which he's not allowed to do. Now, this is super interesting because Flo claimed that Willie accessed it after he left, but then Soltero brings up emails that show Flo saying that they cut off Willie from the Periscope on November 3rd, the day that he quit. So there's actually emails from, I think Pyle sent some sort of email to everybody saying, Willie Saylor's out. What's the next move? Let's get him off of the Gmails, Periscope, Stripe, you name it. They told everybody at the tech department at Flo, get Willie out of here. And so there is literally emails where they're all saying, yes, he was off the Periscope yesterday, which would have been November 3rd, because at this point it was November 4th, and that's the day that they were saying that Willie went and accessed it. So they're saying that Willie left November 3rd, and then November 4th he was still accessing the Periscope. However, according to the emails, that is not the case. According to the emails, they kicked him out on that day, on November 3rd. And so they asked Mr. Machuca about this, and he says, yeah, but sometimes with tech, it doesn't always work out the day of, so he could have access. Soltero says, can you prove that? And Machuca's just kind of like, yeah. So I think that is a point for Soltero and Willie there. But one thing that is interesting is they had this chart about the access of Periscope every day, and they asked Ray Machuca, did Willie access it after the 3rd? And Machuca says yes, and then they're showing the chart, and it doesn't show that. However, the chart ends on November 3rd, so we actually don't have the data from November 4th on, and I think that was kind of a trap by Soltero to show, hey, look, it doesn't go on past here. And then Machuca, to his credit, says, well, the chart ends on November 3rd, so we don't know anything from the 4th on. So Machuca was wise there. He didn't fall into that trap. One thing that kind of flew under the radar today was Ray Machuca admitting that they got into Willie's personal emails, which I'm not sure is a legal thing to do. However, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know these things. I know that they can get into his Flo emails, but when they brought up some of the other emails, you could see it said Willie Smalls, which would be his personal email. Again, disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, so don't take my word for it, but Soltero did question him on it, and Ray Machuca did admit to it. So take it for what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear more about this later on. Soltero and Machuca, though, they got chippy a lot. And I think this was kind of fuming over the weekend from Friday because we had the whole back and forth that they had the previous day 1 and day 2. And I think that was kind of boiled over into this. However, Machuca did look a little sharper today, but there was a couple things in there that I just think he kind of screwed up for Team Flo. Also, Judge Livingston seemed to be fed up with this thing. And I think what's happening is, I think she's starting to figure out what this case is about. I think she's starting to figure out what's going on. So we had the whole pre-trial stuff. We had day 1, day 2, and I think on day 3, we're finally hearing Judge Livingston. I think we're finally seeing the wheels turn and things start to click for her, and it's getting interesting because she brought up a point which I brought up previously where she talked about the rankings. And what I said on my last video was, I don't understand how the rankings thing was such a big deal because rankings are pretty algorithmic, right? So there's like a certain kind of formula. Now there is a little bit of input here and there, but in this case with Willie, that little bit of input is Willie's brain. So unless Flo owns his brain, I don't understand what the big deal is. And Livingston, who's clearly not a wrestling fan, but that's fine, that doesn't even matter. She's saying that she's like, I don't understand why this is a big deal. Not exactly in those words, but she says that you go off wins and losses, right? And that's public knowledge. Yes. You go off who wrestled who. Yes. So all these things are public knowledge. Those aren't secrets. Those aren't trade secrets. Machuca's defense is, well, we flew Willie around the world and all these different events to talk to coaches and athletes and parents and kind of see how these kids are doing, kind of find out a little bit of background information. And they had all that stuff listed in these data points online. And he took that with them. That's stuff that is not out into the public and isn't so formulaic. But let's be honest here. Most of the time with rankings, they are pretty cut and dry. You beat a guy, you move up, you lose, you go down. It's kind of that. I don't think they really factor in much about the home life of somebody or the secret sauce or, how he's been doing in practice. It's pretty much boils down to, The very beginning of the year, it's how did they do last year? How are they doing right now? And then how they do at the end of the year. It's pretty much that. I could be wrong, but that's kind of my interpretation of it as a fan. Okay, so the second half of the day, we actually got to see the brain on the stand, and this was top tier content. Okay, I would pay $9.99 a month just to watch this. What did we find out with Willie going on the stand? So we've seen Willie on the stand a little bit in the first pre-trial stuff, and this is when we finally get to hear him talk. And actually on day 1 and day 2, Willie really wasn't even on the screen very much at the beginning and kind of at the end, but pretty much this is the first time that we got to see Willie in the actual trial. And what did we find out? We did find out from Karen, who was cross-examining Willie, where she brought up that Willie did indeed get a salary from Rokfin. Martin recruited him to go there, or got him to go there. I got to be careful with what I say. This is a good time to give my disclaimer that I could be getting a lot of this stuff wrong. I'm just trying my best to recall what I saw and what I heard, and talk to a few other people about some stuff, but take everything I say with a grain of salt, or whatever the saying is. But anyways, he says that he got paid, and I quote, $1,500 a month. And apparently he also received health benefits, and apparently he received a $10,000 bonus. She asked him, did any other content creators get this $10,000 bonus? And he says, I don't know, which kind of was the answer a lot of times today, but he says he didn't know, which maybe he doesn't. Another thing that was interesting is they said that Willie received 92% of the cash that he brought in. And if you remember how much Rokfin's subscribers went up from pre-Willie to post-Willie, the user base doubled. So Willie did bring in a little chunk of change there. I'm sure somebody could go and look up how many, and they could figure out the numbers. You guys can figure it out. Drop it in the comment below if you end up figuring it out. Also, figure out how much it went up from pre-NLWC event to after. That'd be kind of interesting. But they did say that after a little while, Willie's percentage went from, instead of being 92%, it went to 72-28 like everybody else. And she asked if that was the case, and Willie said he was unsure, and he says, I don't really know, honestly, if I'm being honest, something like that. So with the NLWC event and Willie, we don't know exactly if he was paid 92%, and then the NLWC thing, I don't know if KL got 70 or if NLWC got 72-28 or what the split was, but I imagine if you know the game, Kale's worth a lot of money, so I don't know. Who cares? Willie was very meticulous with his words when answering questions from Karen Burgess, and it was interesting. I think he knew from the previous witnesses, kind of learned from their mistakes a little bit. So there was one point where they asked Willie, who does the consumers pay when they want to buy the NLWC event? When they pay the $9.99, who are they paying? And he was in the spin zone for about 5 minutes trying to figure out how he should word this. And eventually they boiled it down to Rokfin, which is the answer that we all knew. But I think he was trying to spin it, which it is kind of true. We don't really know who's getting the full $9.99, but I think Karen was alluding to, like, who do you pay when you want the event? When you want the event, where do you swipe your card? And it got more complicated than it really was. Another thing that Karen spent a lot of time on today, for I don't know what reason why, was Willie's legal fees. And we talked about that subject for literally like 10 to 15 minutes, and I have no idea why. I think she's just trying to show that Rokfin is fully backing Willie, but it was really repetitive, and they talked about whether it was Martin or Rokfin or whatever. It boiled down to Rokfin's partly paying for it and Willie's partly paying for it, in which he says that actually this week he has to make his first payment. Judge Livingston seemed to be getting fed up with a lot of the repetitiveness. She said, let's try not to do that from now on. We'll see how it turns out. At the very end, they brought up the Scrap Life t-shirt with the big brain. Of course, we heard about that in the pre-trial stuff, and they show that the shirt is still for sale on the Scrap Life website. They talk about Don Bashada, which he's been mentioned before on the show, and whether or not Willie was getting paid for that. And what they're talking about there is they are also trying to get Willie to stop using monikers that he used at Flo. This one being the brain. The shirt has a brain on it. You can look it up on Scrap Life's website. That was pretty much it for that. What was kind of confusing with Karen, I feel like when Soltero was on there, and I know I've talked about Soltero a little bit, but when Soltero was on there, you could kind of see where it was going a little bit. when Karen was on there, she was just kind of jumping around, and I don't know if she was flustered because Judge Livingston was on her quite a bit today, talking about kept getting mad because she wouldn't answer, or she wouldn't ask questions. She just kept testifying, which means saying statements. Well, when you're examining somebody, you can't do that. You can only ask questions. So she would just say statements. Judge Livingston didn't like it. She kept saying either say yes, no, I don't know, but do not have her testify, because there was a lot of sidebar comments where they would try to say stuff. Willie would do it a little bit. Karen would do it a little bit. Soltero and Machuca would do it a little bit. So Judge Livingston, I think she's really getting sick of it. Honestly, I don't know how this stuff works, but I don't know if they could end it early. I don't know if there's a mercy rule in this thing, but I think that Judge Livingston has had enough, and I don't know if she's going to, I don't know whose side she's going to really rule on, but I think she's starting to figure out what this is, how kind of stupid it is, and how much semantics is really going on. And I think she's kind of over it. Anyways, I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe. We finally hit over 800 subscribers. Let's go. Clap it up a little bit. We want to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. I think we can do it. Thank you for watching. Have a good night. I'll see you either tomorrow or the day after that. Peace.